could go wrong, said the neocons. What's a few men that don't come home? What's a few bombs to the neocons? What's a few lives lost?
G'day real estate investors. Well, we've got a new law in Queensland. When Campbell Newman got voted in, he got rid of a whole lot of paperwork, warning signs and, take this to your solicitor and sustainability declarations. The contracts were, 3 feet thick with all the bullshit. People used to go, what's all this about? We're trying to sign a contract. They didn't understand. Anyway, since then, they've been adding, new bits into the contracts, like, are you aware that whether the neighbour, you've got to disclose whether you're having a fight with a neighbour about a tree hanging over a fence and all sorts of fucking rubbish, really, So now, just to really, really slow things up and make them more expensive and difficult and add extra stress when selling a property in Queensland. Well, we've got this article here from by Lexi Hamilton Smith on ABC Business, I think it is. Real estate experts are warning new mandatory seller laws that allow a buyer the right to terminate a contract right up to the settlement day will push up the cost of selling a property by $1,000 or more. Or more is the operative word there. Tough new laws coming into force in Queensland from the 1st of August will allow buyers to get their entire deposit back and even claim compensation if the vendor fails to offer up vital information. Here's what every seller must know. This is absolutely disgusting. How can we bring in some laws for, protecting the seller? For fuck's sake. This is out of control bullshit. I've heard that in the United Kingdom, a seller can take a better offer right up to settlement day and tell the buyer that's packed up the truck with all the furniture and everything, sorry, you haven't got the house. That's just as disgusting. But imagine that you've paid the deposit, you've bought another house, and you've sold yours. And you're moving into the other house. And a day before settlement, or 2 days or a week or 3 days or whatever it is, the buyer of your house pulls out because you forgot to do this disclosure form. Or you didn't get confirmation from the buyer that they'd viewed the disclosure form. That's all the buyer needs is, I'm sorry, I didn't acknowledge that I'd saw that. I didn't see that one. Sorry. And you're out of pocket by a mile. I mean, even if this doesn't happen, you're out of pocket anyway because of this Form 2 seller disclosure statement. And I'm yet to find out if they come up on the Real Works program if you're with the REIQ. But if you're not and you're using ADL forms, I haven't seen one show up on mine. So let's see what this seller disclosure statement, and I've actually got a property waiting for a buyer to sign the contract, and we're waiting for the seller to work with the seller's solicitor to work with the seller to get this Form 2 filled out and signed properly. And up goes the bill. While we're having that, I haven't done a lot of digging on this yet, but who knows? The Queensland Law Society probably lobbied the government to introduce this so that you're there we go. Now this is a duplication of what's already on the contract. Whether there are any tree orders that apply to the property. Well, there's already a disclosure in there about whether you're having a dispute with the neighbour about a tree overhanging the boundary, for Christ's sake. If the property is affected by a government transport resumption proposal or infrastructure project, well, that is normal disclosure. You know, that the courts are there for that sort of thing. Every one of us as a real estate agent knows that you don't go not disclosing things, especially if there's a main road plan to go through the front yard in the next 20 years. I've been directly involved with this sort of thing where a lady advertised her house for about 5 years and then the main roads bought it off her because no one else would buy it because there was a proposed bloody highway going through the front yard. Just a line on a map, but you know, that's fair enough. There's no need for that. If the property, number 3, if the property is affected by the Queensland Heritage Act, well, that's part of the normal searches that a solicitor does anyway. Whether unlicensed building work has taken place in the previous 6 years. Well, I'm in a very rural area in Queensland, and every yard has got a shed on it that's not approved, an outside toilet that was never approved, was supposed to be pulled down when they built the house, all sorts of things out. There's people living next door in a shed that's not council approved to live in. But you know what? If the council around here went around and kicked everyone out of the properties that weren't council approved, they would have thousands and thousands of people at their front door protesting, tearing the place apart. You can't do that in this area. You might be able to get away with it in the middle of fucking Subiaco or King's Cross, but you can't do it here because people are still relatively free. So that is just the normal par for the course as well. The solicitors normally, when you go under contract, they will do the search and say, oh, the shed's not approved. Sometimes, a lot of times, people have built a shed or a livable dwelling that's just hasn't got the final, they call it. So you just got to rush around and get that final piece of paper and pay the oligarchs another $400,000, $500,000 to get a piece of paper to say that the shed is built to, you know, the building code or whatever the structure is. Okay, so that happens. But that is a normal par for the course. Well, that's why you have a solicitor. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 points there that are irrelevant. That doesn't need to happen. So now they're making everyone sort of do this up front, and we're only asking the seller, you know, to the best of their knowledge. And then the seller's going to have to disclose, yes, 3 years ago we put up a little timber shed in the corner there and it's not approved. And then what happens? Then maybe the buyer will say, you know, oh, well, I don't want to pay so much. But normally, if you've got an agent, the agent will ask that question when they list the property. I bet that isn't council approved. Is that a council approved? No. Okay, we'll just disclose it when we show the people around. Oh, hello, Fred and Wilma. There's a shed in the corner. It's not been approved. It looks pretty sturdy, but it's not approved. In this area, in the major town in this area, before 1974, I think it was, there was no council approval. You had good builders that built good houses and the shit ones went out of business. And it was your responsibility to make sure that you built a house that didn't get blown away in a cyclone. And there's many old Queenslanders standing around that have been through 3 cyclones that have never had a piece of paper issued by a bureaucrat red taper down at the council office, the communists. There's no need for any of this shit. Legal costs to prepare this 7-page document we've got now. An extra 7 pages and a huge amount of expense. 7-page document vary from about $600 to $1,500 depending on who you ask, and the money will have to be paid by the seller up front. However, agents have said that the vendor may try to add it to the final sale price. Of course they will. Well, it doesn't matter if you add it and show it and say, oh, you know, how much do you want to break it down? Taxes, you know, how many carrots you're going to buy with it, whatever. You don't worry about that. but it doesn't have to be seen. Of course, it will be added to the sale price. Of course, it'll drive the cost up of selling a property. In a state so prone to severe weather events, flooding, or another natural hazard, history does not have to be disclosed. Well, they've already got maps with flood overlays anyway. Nor does structural soundness, pest infestation, limits imposed by planning laws, or if there's any asbestos on site. No, because that's all covered normally anyway. All of this is covered. You definitely have to well, you can get a well, everyone gets a structural soundness building inspection and a pest inspection, sometimes before, especially if it's going to auction, but quite often that's a condition of the contract. We'll pay this much pending the building pest inspection. It's a normal par for the course. The current historical use of the building, if it was once a massage parlour or a boarding house, will also not have to be disclosed on the statement. Yeah, but who knows when that's coming, hey? We all know that, if someone died violently in the house, or, if someone, that's a grey area of the law. Watch them do that next. You have to disclose if someone died in it. So you sell an old Queenslander, and then the buyer finds out that grandma died in it in 1904 that you had no idea, and none of the owners have, and they sue you for it. Is that coming next? Who knows? This communist at the head of the REIQ, the Real Estate Institute of Queensland CEO Antonia Mercarella, said this new law would create some consistency and bring Queensland in line with other states. She's a government shill. She's not standing up for real estate agents in Queensland. Everything that she writes just about and comes out of her mouth is, I'm in support of all this over-regulation. However, buyers still need to remain vigilant and think about other types of due diligence. Nothing about the poor fucking seller, eh? It's all buyer, tenant. Fucking communist bastards. Similarly, the seller needs to understand that a property cannot be sold or a contract entered into until the statement is given, Ms. Mercarella said. Watch out what you do with your own property, guys. It's not yours anymore. If you stop paying the rates after 3 years, you'll lose it to the council. They'll bring a bailiff and some police and fucking throw you out of it and sell you up. So you're renting it off the council. So don't think just you've got some title there, even if you've owned it outright. It's not yours. And if you want to sell it, well, you'll have to check with your overlords, won't you? Here's another 7 pages of bullshit. Unbelievable. Because if that were to occur, then potentially the buyer could terminate the contract. So it's just another extra level of stress for everyone. How's that, eh? And it will slow things up. In the free market world, or the semi-free market world that I started selling real estate in, there was no minimum wage. You didn't have to pay your salespeople that had just come on board, 52 grand a year and all this sort of rubbish. Now they've got that, and now, like, you used to be able to go, well, I think these buyers are really keen. I'll take a contract with me, and we'll sign it on the bonnet of the car. We'll have a good look around. We'll stand out the front. What do you think? Yep, I want to pay this much. I want to offer that. Well, we'll put that on a contract. I'll put it straight to them in writing, so it's, now you can't do that now. Well, maybe you can if you can get hold of the seller disclosure form and fill it all out. But it seems that, the cost, adding a cost of $1,000 to $1,500, that means the lawyer's got to do it. You'll have to check me on that. But I would say that's what it's all about. The Parliament's full of lawyers. And every business in Australia is overrun with lawyers now. We need lawyers to do everything. Aren't they rejoicing? They've always been Holy shit, how come that agent got so much for selling that house? How do we get a bigger chunk? You know? I'm only getting $1,500 here. That guy's getting 10 grand. How do we change that? I'll tell you what, lawyers, you don't work the weekends. You're down at the markets, fluffing around, buying some strawberries. And the agents are there, flat out, showing people through houses and working all day Saturday and sometimes Sunday, and then all week as well. And then they get home and they're halfway through their dinner and they're taking calls. And you won't do it and you can't do it. Most can't do it, and most won't do it. That's why every transaction attracts anywhere from 1 to 3 or more % on the sale, because someone's working their ass off making sure that the seller gets the best deal, gets the best buyer. The Form 2 can be prepared by the seller, the seller's solicitor, or the seller's real estate agent if authorised. Well, there we go. All parties can sign the statement electronically. This new framework is designed to reduce disputes and improve transparency in property transactions. Chaos and headaches ahead. Brisbane property manager Brett Andreasen said the new law would create more confusion in the industry. Yes, it would. He said existing contracts already contain 90% of the information required and believed that the 10% not included could be placed in formal contracts. Correct. Normally they just add shit into the contracts and don't even ask anyone anyway. For a lot of sellers, it's making it too complicated. They're already asking, why do we have to do these costs on top of everything else, he said. What is going to happen is their solicitor's work will then be duplicated again by the buyer's solicitor. So the buyer is paying again because their lawyer will say we can't trust what has been provided to us. Dead right, Mr. Andreasen. He also raised a red flag for private sellers who may not be across the changes. Sellers have been bringing their sales forward to try and miss out on the confusion of what's going to happen, he said. Real estate agent Michael Sheen said vendors were in shock when they were told of the added cost to comply. Lawyers are telling agents the document will take at least 5 days to prepare, Mr. Sheehan said. He said transactions could be slowed by up to a week, and the process could hinder anyone trying to quickly close an unsolicited cash offer. Exactly what I just said without even reading the article. At the end of the day, he believed the change would give buyers some peace of mind. Most buyers won't even understand. They're like, what am I supposed to acknowledge here? What's going on? Don't the solicitors check all this stuff? Layer upon layer of bureaucracy, guys. Unbelievable. What about sales involving body corporate? This is where, cost-wise, it gets messy. While lawyers and conveyancers are still running out the true cost to be passed on to clients, there are fears Queensland's 52,000 body corporates, which manage the sale of units and townhouses, will be out of pocket. According to Strata Community Association General Manager Laura Boss, this was because the government set a prescribed fee for the data gathering involved in community title schemes. Another problem created by legislation. That fee is $84.10, and she said the real cost for a body corporate certificate was more than $200. So the government made a law to make sure that these body corporates get ripped. Mrs. Boss said the fact that some records were still on paper would complicate work where some were assuming could be done by pressing a button. There is going to be a $3 million headache for Queenslanders in the next 12 months, she said. We've done time and motion on it, and it's not just a figure we've plucked out of the air. Somebody's going to have to pay for the shortfall. She's worried there will be people living in body corporates who are not parties to a transaction who are now going to have to foot the bill. Correct. Communism. The government has sent a signal to the market that is completely at odds with what the commercial reality of the situation is. Well said. So there you have it. More good news for business transactions in Australia. Trendsetters. Maybe I'll bring you some good news next week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.